In that video, we will cover another repetition structure in Python. We just covered the for loop and you are invited to check it out. Now, it's time to learn about while loops. We also discuss the concept of infinite loop and the break and continue statements. The syntax of a while loop is very simple. You first type the keyword while, followed by a condition and a colon. Now, we'll define the while loop block. All the Python comments inside the block will be indented. That's the way the Python interpreter knows that it belongs to a block. When you want to finish the block, you only need to outdent and keep typing valid Python commands. The while loop works in the following way. While a condition is true, execute the block of statements, and that block will be repeated over and over again. We will just leave that block in case that condition now returns false. Let's check one example. Imagine we are playing a video game and it is time to battle against the boss. Before the battle starts, the boss has 100% life that will be represented by an integer number 100. I will assign 100 to a variable called boss life. Every hit on the boss has a damage of 10. Equally, I will assign 10 to a variable called hit damage. As you know, we only win in case the boss life reaches 0. We can simulate that battle using a while loop. First, we're going to display on the screen the value of boss life, in that case 100. Then, in line 9, we're going to start typing our while loop. For that, we just type while. The condition, what is the condition? In case boss life is greater than 0, that boss is still alive. If that's true, we're going to run or execute the while loop. Then we're going to hit the boss. When we hit the boss, we decrement the boss life in hit damage. We assign hit damage to 10. Now at this moment, boss life is going to be assigned to 100 minus 10, which is going to be 90. Then we're going to print it, hit boss life 90. That line is the last line of the while block. How do I know that? Because that's the last indented line. Then we're going to evaluate again that condition. Now boss life is 90. 90 is still greater than 0, then that block will be executed again, and that process will be run over and over up to the point when that sentence returns false. When is it? When boss life is equal to 0 or less than 0. When that sentence returns false, we are out of the block, and then we're going to print the boss is no longer alive, you won. Let me just save that script and run it. Python, the name of the file, which is while loop, and then we get boss life, which is the return of the line 8. Then we get hit, that's the first time we hit the boss. Now the boss life is assigned to 90 all the way to 0. Now when the boss life is 0, that sentence returns false, and then we finally defeat the boss, and then we get the line 13 executed. The boss is no longer alive. And that's basically how the while loop works. The second example will combine your knowledge of lists and while loops. Let me just comment the first example and bring the second one. Alright, that's the problem. We're gonna throw a party, a birthday party, but we have 9 friends, Walt, Jesse, Mary, all the way up to Ella. The issue here is the fact that we are only allowed to invite 5 of them, and we like them all equally. That's the main reason you see the line 17 here, because we're gonna be using a module called random, and more specifically, a method from that module called choice, because that module can go to that list and pick one of that element. Each element must have the same probability to be chosen. Alright. How to solve that issue? Those are our friends. We assign that list to that friends variable. Now we're gonna create an empty list. I call it party list. What is that list doing here? Every time I invite someone, I'm gonna append that person to that list, and then I can control, and then I can check while the length of that list is less than 5, and if that returns true, the block of that while loop will be executed. So while I don't have 5 friends invited, I'm still allowed to invite another person. Then, if that's the case, if it returns true, guess will be assigned to the result of that line. Which line? Random, which is the module, choice, which is the method of that module, and then we just give the friends. Here, we can get any of those elements. Let's say Walt. Now, Walt will be assigned to guest, and then we print Walt is invited. We're gonna append Walt to the party list, and that's one thing that you must do. Every time one person is invited, you should remove that person from friends list. Why? Because you don't want to invite Walt twice, right? And then we'll come back to that check. Is the length of that list less than 5? If it's still true, the block will be executed again. And that process will go over and over up to the point that that list has 5 elements. Let's run it. I save it, clear my screen, and run my script. Now, my first guess is Mary, then Jesse, John, Ella, and Paul. And now, how many friends do you have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the main reason the block stopped, or the loop stopped. Why? Because now, when I check that condition, it will return false. And the line 29 is executed. And then we get invited friends, Mary, Jesse, John, Ella, and Paul. Let's just imagine that you forgot to remove that friend from the friends list. If I close or if I clean my terminal and run it again, it might happen that you get the same person invited twice. In that case, you have Jackie, Mary, Paul, and Jack again. And that's exactly what you don't want. When writing a while loop, it can happen that you face an infinite loop. It happens when the condition we evaluate always returns true. If I take the boss battle example and comment the decrement of the boss life, we will run in an infinite loop. Why? Let's just comment it. Boss life is 100, and 100 is for sure greater than 0, therefore that block will be executed. In the end of that block, that condition will be evaluated again. As we no longer have a decrement of that boss life, it will always return true. If I save it and run that script, you see that the condition always returns true and boss life is always 100. When you find yourself in an infinite loop, how can you break it, or how can you interrupt that? You can either press the X here, so you close the terminal, or you just type Ctrl+C or hit Ctrl+C. Perfect. When you hit Ctrl+C, you're gonna get that keyboard interrupt, and you basically manually interrupt that loop. What is the takeaway here? In order to avoid an infinite loop, we should do something inside that loop that eventually make that test to evaluate as false. In that case, what we did, we were decrementing boss life. Now, once you decrement boss life, there will be a time where boss life is 0, then that condition will return false. Now you no longer run in an infinite loop. We will learn how to break a while loop even though a given condition returns true. Here in that simple example, 0 is assigned to count. And while count is less than 10, let's just print let's count. And then you're gonna have let's count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 9. Why? Because as soon as count is assigned to 10, that statement here, or that condition here, will return false. Therefore, the block will be no longer executed. Let's run it. For that, I just type Python, the name of the file, and then we get let's count from 0 to 9. But now, how to implement the break, how to use the break. In case I want to give a condition and say if count is equal to 6, for instance, I want to break that loop. Let's run it. Now, count first is 0, 0 is less than 10, and then we're gonna execute the block. We check if count is 6, that's not the case, then we increment that count. But as soon as count is assigned to 6, what's going to happen? 6 is again less than 10, we're gonna execute the block, 6 will be printed, let's count 6, but now that condition here will return true. Then the break will be executed, and once the break is executed, you're gonna break the while loop. Now, let's talk about continue. The continue statement forces the loop to restart the iteration. We also saw it in the for loop, and again, the break and the continue statements, they are used in all repetition structure in Python, the for loop, while loop, and if you didn't watch the video about the for loop, you are more than invited to do so. Alright, how does the continue work here? So first you assign 0 to count, and then count is less than 10, therefore the while block will be executed, and you're gonna print 0. Nothing will happen here. Why? Because 0 is not equal to 6, therefore count will be incremented. Now count is assigned to 1. And that process will repeat up to the point that count is assigned to 6. And as soon as count is assigned to 6, what's going to happen? We're going to execute the continue statement. It means that the line 10 will not be executed. And then count now is still 6, and 6 is less than 10. And we're going to print again 6. 6 will be evaluated here as true, and we're going to do the same. We're going to continue. We're going to execute continue. Therefore, we come back to the iteration, and line 10 is again not executed, and that's what we just saw. That's an infinite loop. So be careful when using continue with while loop. It's quite useful, but just don't get in an infinite loop. In that case, we are in an infinite loop. If I just type Python and the name of the file, there we are. Now, how can we get rid of that infinite loop? Imagine you don't want to print 6 and just go to the next iteration. That's going to be 7. How to do that? Let's just first break the infinite loop. We just press Ctrl C. And now the only thing you need to do is take that print, put it here. So what we are basically doing, we are checking in the very beginning. So now if count is assigned to 6, go to the next iteration. If I leave like that, that's still an infinite loop because we are not iterating. We are not changing the value assigned to count. We just take the count assignment and we also increment inside that if statement or that if block. If I now run that code, clean my screen and run that code, we see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. So 6 is not printed. Why? Because as soon as 6 is assigned to count, we're gonna increment count. So in that moment, count is 7 and we continue. Now when we type continue, we come back to the loop and now we're gonna have 7, 8, and 9 printed. Again, when count is assigned to 10, that condition is gonna return false. Therefore, you are completely out of the while loop. And that's it. That's everything I had to say about while loop. See you in the next video.